much. Right, good morning everybody, it's lovely to see you. So my name is Freddie and I will properly introduce myself in a minute, but I've also got some gifts this morning. So, well, gifts, maybe some of you might not want it, but I'm going to ask you to think about something in a minute, and the best answer, I've got 2 books to give away. Sorry, my name's on there, but so you might not want the book, but that's the only gift I have this morning. So, thank you very much indeed. As I said, I'm Freddie, and I'm from an organisation called the Red Thread Partnership. I will tell you a little bit more about the business in a sec. What I'm not going to do today, let's just signpost what I'm not going to do today, is I'm not going to talk to you about policies around employment, because I'm not a lawyer. We do work with lawyers, and they have a very good law firm in particular. So Graham, I'm sure any employment questions on hybrids and policies and contracts of employment I'm sure will be answered. So I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is I'm going to challenge you perhaps to think about the label, already I'm using an LP, the label of hybrid, and hence the reasons for the title. Is hybrid a myth or a reality? Is it something that we've invented and not a label that we invented during the pandemic? And that is a question I really want you to think about, and I'm going to challenge you around that today, and perhaps get you to think about that in a different way. COVID, I was staggered. It was this morning or yesterday. I was looking at some stats. When did COVID start? Any idea? When did COVID actually kick off?
March 2020.
March 2020. No.
January?
Nope. It's earlier than that.
November 2019. November 2019.
It's November 2019, yeah. So we're in our 3rd year of the pandemic. Can you believe this? 3 years. It's incredible how quickly time goes. I mean, there was some good news this morning. They said it feels like we're coming towards the end of it. I don't know if you've heard that. Hallelujah. Because it's been tough. And I think the other thing you've got to think about, it has fundamentally changed everything. I think it has changed the way we work. I think it's changed the way we see work. And hence why we have a challenge around hybrid, or what we call hybrid. But I think there are many other challenges around how we work today, how we want to work today. I'm sure you've all heard about the Great Resignation, especially for those of you who work in recruitment. And also the Great Resignation, the Great Repurposing, and then we've also had the Great Regret. I wonder what's next. The Great Joy, the Great Happiness, I don't know, who knows. So I want to challenge our thinking and our thoughts around that. And that includes also, I've been part of that because I have been running a company now for over 10 years, and 18 months ago, I made a different decision myself. We were, and had always been, a virtual business, and actually, because of the pandemic, for the first time ever, we got an office. So everybody who went away from offices, we actually decided we were quite lonely working virtually, and we wanted a base from where to work. So that made something different for us as a business. And that's also the other thing I want us to think about today. I think every individual businesses are different, of course they are. And that means that perhaps around hybrid, you've got to think about it from an individual point of view, rather than what's the right thing to do. Okay? So I want you to think about that as we go through today. Now, let me tell you just a little bit about who we are. So, we are a global leadership and change consultancy. We've been in business for over 10 years. We have a very clear purpose, and I'll talk about purpose because I'm going to touch on purpose again today. We exist to help leaders deal with their big issues by building human organizations. And we do this by developing and enriching leaders. We also grow highly successful teams, and we create what we call inclusive cultures. What we do is we love having conversations that grow organizations. And a lot of the stuff we do isn't complicated, it's just hard. I have to say that the pandemic has brought some complexity to the world of work. So I think it is both at time now complex and hard. That's the challenge. Some people say this is our vanity slide. Actually, I like to call it, this is our proud slide. So we're very proud of the people that we work with, and we're very lucky to work with some incredible organizations as well who have human challenges. So we help them deal with those big issues. So, 3 years on, from the pandemic. Okay, there's the first challenge. Can anyone give me a description of what they think hybrid working is or isn't? And I said, best description, we'll start to win the first book. Okay, so what did you talk about when you were together?
I would say hybrid working really, like you're saying, it depends on the type of environment or culture or type of business, but as a consequence of the pandemic, it's created a choice really of individuals being able, and again, it depends on the role they do, but either working from home or off-site location, as opposed to going into a factory, an office or whatever. It gives a mixture of working patterns, because it's probably been forced on us as a consequence of the pandemic, and it now appears to be the new way of working.
Right.
Although there may be businesses trying to bring people back, whether it's ever going to change again, I don't know. I think this is probably here to stay for certain types of organisations, but it's giving, going back to that word, a choice.
A choice. Okay. Sorry, what's your name?
David.
David. Morning, David. Thank you very much. What have you got? What kind of business you got, David? Have you got
I
local
work
business?
at the One Group.
Yeah, you work at the
Yeah,
One Group.
I work at
Yeah.
the
Okay. Okay. Choice is interesting. So, and I get my first question for that will be: hasn't the choice always been there, or hasn't the ability to work differently not always been there?
Probably the ability to be able to do it has been there. I suppose the technology, what was there before the pandemic,
Yeah.
but now technologies, if the pandemic had happened 20 years ago, then I think the choice would probably have been more challenging,
Yeah.
because trying to connect on a Teams call, the technology just wasn't there,
No,
was it? So it wouldn't work.
So the technology has become undoubtedly the enabler. And actually, maybe that's the point we've got to think about. Okay, so thank you, David. Anyone else? Yes. What's your name, sir?
My name's Rudy.
Rudy.
Rudy, yes.
Rudy. Good morning, Rudy.
Good morning to you. I think hybrid working is having the opportunity to work where you work best to be more productive.
So say that again for me.
Hybrid working allows you to work where you work best
Where you work
to become more productive.
Work best. Okay. So I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes.
How do you know it is where you work best, and how do you know you're being productive? What
Measurement.
evidence?
Measurement of what you do is what your outcomes will be. So if you're more accommodating more at home because you're more flexible, you can work in your own time period, or you prefer to work in an environment where there's more people, your colleagues, then you can become more productive in whichever environment works for you.
Okay, so does that mean actually, if you have a preference for being an introvert, you're all familiar with introvert, aren't you? Introvert. I'm a big introvert, actually. Sorry, I'm only kidding. So if you're introverted and that's your preference, you reckon that actually the best environment for you, will be to work perhaps more from home, because you'd have more space to think, yeah? So what you're talking about here is very much an individual choice. An individual, yeah? Okay. Individual choice. Okay. I think we're going to explore that as well, because I think that is a very important statement, yeah? Individuality, individual choice, when we work for organisations as well. Okay? Anyone else?
I think it also depends
What's
on
your
the
name?
role. So I'm Becky.
Becky, hi Becky.
I think it also depends on the role, like, because I work in HR, it's very people focused, it's face to face, and so I'm in the office 2 days a week, and they're my days when I meet with people, I have my meetings, I have my catch ups, I sort of see what's going on in the office, but then the 3 days from home is where I do my admin, I write my contracts, I make my calls, I have my virtual meetings with people that aren't necessarily in the office, and it just splits my week a lot better. I can bond with my team better in the office compared to virtual, but then I also get that aspect of today's an admin day, drop my son off at nursery, get on with admin, pick him up, get him settled, carry on with admin, and I tend to be a lot more productive at home.
Isn't that flexible working?
Yeah, true.
Because that's been around for a while, isn't it? Flexible working. Any of you worked flexible?
But it's having the mix of both, isn't it? It's the hybrid of it. Like I have my days in the office, I do my normal 9 to 5, but then I also have my days at home.
Okay.
It's
So what makes it hybrid rather than flexible? Sorry, I'm
I'm
thinking.
thinking because
Yes.
to me it would be one or the other. So
So what's the difference between the two?
you're having days in the office and you're having days at home.
Okay. Whereas this is your choice, more your choice about how you work.
And
So-
that how your role works as well.
Ah,
Like some
okay.
people say sales where they could be completely remote, I imagine, where they've got that aspect of they're doing a B2B anyway. You've got the team
Yeah.
around, maybe have team days once a month or something. But with my HR role, it's a lot more face to face.
You talked about individual and what's best for the organisation and whether or not it's an individual choice. So there's something very big around that, isn't it? So for an individual, it might be perfect, but actually it's role dependent as well, but also the team. How does the team work best? If they're a team that needs to be able to generate ideas, can you replicate that digitally?
Because that's what I mean. It's important because we need to explore that. Because for me, there's this individual designer needs at any particular time, and then of course imagine that we are the manager of a team that is surrounded by extrovert and they like to be together and chat and brainstorm, and we're absent because we like to work hybrid. That brings some complexity in itself, doesn't it?
It brings that distance, and we have that challenge because we're publishing. We have that challenge in the creative teams that we have because they get together, they do the ideas, you're working, you've got pairs of designers, you've got editors, and it's very visual. You can't replicate that digitally
Yes.
or remotely.
Yes.
So
Yes.
they all come in on a Wednesday, the whole team, and they have like a really buzzing team. But because they're quite creative, they're also quite big pockets of introverts which go home to almost recharge and have their days from home then.
So it's complex. What else? Any other thoughts?
So you said about being in a physical space and being able to move around. If we look back 10 years as to the technology we've got now, which enables us to do what we do now, we couldn't have imagined it. So in the future, are they just going to have VR glasses and move things around in space? Is that going to change?
Yeah.
Are we only part of the change?
I saw a technology, I think it was about 10 years ago. I was doing a piece of work with a paper company in Northampton, and they were diversifying and moving into flexi-glass technology. And they demonstrated what the future would look like, and in fact it was incredible. They had a wall made of glass, okay, and they were running a joint lesson with another school in India through the glass technology.
Oh wow.
It was the most unbelievable thing. So, I mean, that's the thing we've got to think about. Technology has become the biggest driver of change through COVID and the pandemic. So the pandemic has accelerated, you know, the possibilities on how we can work. But that also added the complexity for organizations because that hasn't been written in lots of policies. Oh, I wouldn't mention policies. Sorry. Or employment contracts or anything. But that's the point. So we've got to start to understand that actually is hybrid a true thing, or is it a multitude of things? So let me explain what I mean. Remote working. Heard of remote working? So these potentially could be descriptions of hybrid working, remote working. Working with colleagues who are not in the same place as you are. Some people label that as hybrid. Okay? And research research suggests you need to be 30 feet away from someone before you are remote working. Now, so you work in IT, I can't remember your name, sorry, Rob. Rob, you're in IT. IT consultants, and in IT, you've been working remotely for, well, since IT started, really, haven't you? Yeah.
But
But
I think for me, you talked about flexible versus hybrid.
Yeah.
Flexible is where your office and your company has the facilities to accommodate all of the workforce, and flexible is where they have that choice about whether they want to work remotely or not. There are some companies that we're working with who have taken the decision that they don't want, or they've downsized maybe their office facilities and decided we cannot have everybody in the office now, so we will move to a hybrid way of working where some people will work from home for certain days, some will be in the office, and then they switch and rotate. So I think there are some companies that have taken the decision, it's not going to be flexible working where you can work at home, where you can work from home. Some days you're working from the office, some days you're working.
And this is part of the problem. So we do work with lots of organisations, and we do a lot of work around culture. And I'll talk to you about a company we've been working with who've been growing through acquisition, where we've done a piece of work around defining hybrid working. And you're absolutely right. And the problem is it's confusing for people, because hybrid means a lot of things, and hybrid hasn't truly been defined into what do we really mean. So you're right, absolutely right. What kind of organisation do we need to be today to best operate in the most efficient way, where our people are going to be happy to come to work with an organisation like us? And in recruitment, that's going to be important to put some definition of that. So the first caution is, do you individually in your organisation understand what hybrid really means? Now, there's also this description about virtual teams. Virtual teams, one or more members of the team are working remotely. Can also sometimes be used to refer to scratch team, put together for a sprint project. You'll know all this term. Sprint, scratch, more language, more definition, more labels to what we need. Flexi working, being able to change your hours, time of working. Now you need a new contract for that, I suppose. Do you need a new contract for all of this? I mean, do you mind asking me how much of your work today is involved into rewriting policies and contracts of employment?
So we have been involved in a number of sort of contracts where people want to build it into their flexible working, hybrid working, where it is into their contracts.
Please help me!
Thought I knew what I was talking about with hybrid working before I came in here.
I knew what it was, I was sorry.
I think a lot of the time we're sort of saying it depends for our clients is whether they're being obliged to provide that commitment,
yes,
and the person wants that commitment in a contractual context,
yeah,
or whether, like a lot of companies are doing, like we do it for example, House Personal, we have a policy, so our starting point is your contract is your place of work is, say, here, but actually we have a policy that says, we call it locate for your diary, so we deal with it by policy. It's almost a privilege rather than a right.
Okay, that's interesting. How did you embed this in your culture?
We had locate for your diary policy before COVID, and but I don't think as you can imagine, it wasn't used as it is now.
Indeed.
So, and it's that that's obviously COVID has clearly shifted. So now most people do it. So I'll do example, my secretary, who had never worked from home before, a lot of the last people out of the office with lockdown, and now she uses 3 days a week from home.
It's changed beyond recognition. So let me continue with my definition from here. So we got remote working, virtual team, flexi working, working from home, and what we call distance management. By the way, so thank you for your definition. You're the first winner of the book, so I'll sign it for you as well if you want to.
Yes.
So, I thought I'd forgotten to do that. So now we know why we're confused, aren't we? Potentially. But the good news is, I'm going to give you the answer. That's the good news. The good news is we're going to get to it. But I just want to share with you, hybrid working is not new. Well, I'm going to use the label of hybrid working, it's not new. The Centre for Distance Management produced research setting out how remote workers could give their best and be managed effectively. That was way before the year 2000. Okay? So that has been around for a long time. What do we need to do to keep our workforce happy, engaged? The virtual team. We did a big program for GSK, one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies, which we delivered in 2005 around leading in complex environment. This is a distributed global organization who has always struggled with managing at a distance. I'll come back to that in a minute. I'll explain why it's been complex. Flexi working. Do you remember the gigging economy? Do you remember that? Do you remember the term? Who remember what gigging meant? What was a gigger? There's another label.
Was that the interim working?
Yeah.
So we moved from role to role in more of a consultancy temporary.
Absolutely. Yeah, so this was about freelancers, part-time. The gigging economy is growing. Well, I'm going to give you a new name today to take away with you. Yes, which is going to also through technology transform everything. It's all your fault, sir. I'm sorry. But you need to help us. Flexi working, working from home. Sales and services worker have been working this way and from their cars. I've been in that was me. That's been my career, frankly. In fact, the less I was in the office, the better. Because people should say, what are you doing in the office? You should be out there. You're not productive if you're here. I miss you. So, yes, that was me. And also, we've got all sorts of things. All of them mentioned. And there is a new breed of workers.
Actually, can I just mention something? Almost a throwaway comment there. I miss you. When
it's not a throwaway comment, by the way. You have to remember, I'm an organisational psychologist and I use NLP. So, in fact, you're all hypnotised right now.
But I didn't want to move on without
no, please.
Picking up on that.
Yes,
because
please.
when we went into pretty much full lockdown
Yeah.
in around March 2020, we've got a lot of young people working with us, and when everyone was working at home, their first, for that first week or so, it was yay.
Holiday.
But within a few weeks to a month, I'm one of the mental health first aiders
Yes.
at our company as well, and
Yeah.
I was speaking to more and more of the young people
Yes.
who, it's all to do with the facilities they have in the home environment as well, because they may have parent one, in the office, parent two in the kitchen, and they're working from their bedrooms. So, and gaming a lot, in the evening, so they might be in their bedrooms pretty much 24/7. And the missing you bit was really important. The banter in the office, meeting with their friends, maybe going out after work, was a massive thing for them.
Massive void.
I think home situations will determine how well hybrid or flexible working works, but equally there's the team and meeting with the colleagues.
Yeah. And thank you for mentioning that. I mean, and this is where we have to be conscious that actually what was isn't. And this is really important for organisation. And this is why also I urge you never ever to try to label things, because it is unhelpful. Because it takes a problem or an issue, puts it in a box and say, and therefore we need a solution or a process to solve it. Well, organisations aren't like that. Organisations are incredibly complex because we have human beings inside, and we are all complex. And we need, we need leaders and organisations to understand that. And that's why in our purpose we help build human organisations. Because you may have a great brand, but you take the human element away, you have nothing. Well, you may have product, but that's not going to sell itself on its own, or whatever. Thank you. We ran a lot of online programs. We're lucky we have a brilliant program, in fact, that we're going to be launching with our partner here, which is an online program called Work Class Manager, and we run it with coaching. And I have to tell you, usually we would have a more structured approach. I spend most of my time just having chats, check-ins with younger generation, young people who were struggling in their environment to make sense of what was going on. And actually, I have to be honest, I found it very therapeutic for myself. I found it very helpful as well, because it was great to be able to connect that way. I just want to touch on that, because matrix working, who is familiar with what I mean by matrix working? Do you know what matrix working? Does anybody know? The definition?
Is that where it's part of like an umbrella structure? So that I work in HR and I report to the HR director at the London branch, and that's their virtual manager. And then I manage people in the Italy office, and it becomes like a matrix.
A bit. So it's even more complex than that. So yes, so matrix working has been in existence for a long time, but there's lessons to be learned on that. Because I promise you all this is going to come together, by the way, okay? So matrix working is when you could have your direct report who could be based in America, for example,
Yeah.
say for example, yeah? But you will have a dotted line to a local
Yeah.
manager, okay? And then you have to talk about, and then you have the complexity that you may be then put on a project where you're going to have another person who's accountable for that project, who you may have to be accountable or responsible for. Are you familiar with something called RACES? So RACES is a way of working in matrix organizations which define who's responsible, and you can have more than one person responsible. Who's accountable, so there's only one person who can ever be accountable for a project, okay? And then where's the support, where do we need to inform people? So it's a way of managing complexity in matrix organization. Now,
A bit like with GDPR, for example, where you have numerous different people that are involved in the information, but then you've got one that's controller.
kind of, yeah, because that's more project-based. So what you tend to do is, because it is complex, you then use RACES, okay, to identify, as I said, the accountability and what the role that needs to for communication, for decision-making, and so on and so forth. Now, it is important because when we think about hybrid, there's also some element of that needs to come into place. And I'll come back to that. But, so organizations, a few years ago decided that to be leaner, to be faster, to be more agile, they were going to flatten the organization. So no hierarchy, okay? They flattened the organization and they said, right everybody, we made it easier for all of you to work. Yeah? You don't have to report to a boss over there, decision making is going to be a lot easier, off you go. And it completely collapsed. Do you know why? Because that's also part of the challenges we have with hybrid today, working or remote working. Because no one trained the managers, the organization, on how to do it. They didn't spend any time, they just said, this is the organization, off you go, can continue doing what you've done, but they didn't spend any time doing it. Now, in an organization like this, what do you think is the single most important element of success? When you have your boss maybe in the US, when you have reporting lines in different areas. Sorry?
Communication.
That's important. That's the number 2. What's the number 1?
Trust.
Come back to trust. Yes. So how do we? Okay, let's do trust. How do we establish trust?
Relationship.
Thank you, sir. I'll give you another book, but I'm going to come back to trust because that is one of the unlockers I'm going to talk about today. And how many of us actually get rewarded for spending time with our colleagues, having a coffee, building relationships? We don't do it. A lot of the time we take each other for granted. Well, it's a colleague, they'll know, they're all under the same umbrella. We'll assume we all know how to work with each other. We, even in my organisation, because we started to work, the reason I say this is because I've seen my Claire going, we even recently got together because we were working in a different way to say, and recontract with each other and say, how is he going? How is he working? How are we feeling? Are we spending enough time with each other? Are we communicating enough? And the answer was no. No, because we do take it for granted. The most important success of a matrix organisation, and I'm going to everywhere, is trust and it's relationships. How many of you do stakeholder mapping in your business? Yes. And?
It works.
Yes. It does, doesn't it? And how important is it?
It's time consuming, and when
Yes.
you're doing it, it's quite hard to see the benefit of it, but then it's all sorts into place.
Yes. It's amazing. So, we build high-performing teams, and actually one of the things we do in building high-performing teams is do stakeholder mapping. And what we do is literally we score every single relationship that are important to us from -5 to -5 to +5. And we're honest, and it's based around, is this person an advocate? Or is this person who will actively go against decisions we want to make? Do we actually know the person? What kind of relationship do we have? Blah, blah, blah. You know, it's good, isn't it? And when you work actively at building relations, it sounds a bit process-driven, but sometimes you have to do that with a complex organisation. I did some work with Nestlé in Holland about 3-4 months ago. Nestlé is a massive organisation, so very hybrid, very remote, very virtual. Do you know how many stakeholders they had, that team? 175 stakeholders. It was just overwhelming. We finished the stakeholder mapping and we looked at each other and we went, oh, lots of lunches then to build a relationship. Yeah, because the moment you do that, you build trust, which we talked about. I'm going to come back to that. Right, so, make sense so far? Yes? I promise you a new definition. I'm going to look at the stats. By 2035, they reckon there's going to be over 1 billion digital nomads. Who's heard of that? Who've heard of the nomads, digital nomads? Yes?
People who are just can be based anywhere in the world, and have work.
Have you heard of that definition? You must have heard of that definition. No? No? Are you surprised? And that is so close to home for me, because actually next week, my son, my eldest, who's 32 years old, and his partner, who had wanted to resign from a job, so she had a very big job in Milton Keynes, marketing manager, went to a boss and said, I cannot work these long hours, I've had enough, I'm going. And they went, oh, you can't do that. We don't want to lose you. What do you want? Literally, what do you want? She said, well, I don't want to work this. Well, let's find a way. So next week, they've got a van, they've kitted, and they are off travelling in France, and they must settle anywhere where it takes their fancy. And she has been given a contract where she can work anywhere, been given the technology, because they don't want to lose her, and they are becoming nomads. I'm going to miss them. Yeah, because the other one's going to Taiwan with his wife, so there we are. But there's another trend to think about. Yes?
But that's very role dependent, isn't it?
Sorry?
That's very role dependent.
But isn't that what hybrid is?
But yeah, but not every role can be hybrid.
No, and I agree. So I am with you. I am with you. But I guess what I'm getting towards is, because we have a tendency of labeling things, are we limiting potentially our opportunity to recruit brilliant talent who can work very differently if we become limited? And I agree with you, some roles will never be there. But that then, I'll come back to that in a minute, yeah, I'll come back to that. So you're right. So who are the nomads? Are they going to be the new gig economy? I don't know. Aren't Instagrammers, you know, these people who seem to be traveling all the time, and these beautiful places, filming each other, aren't they the digital nomads? Of course they are, aren't they? That's who they are. 1 billion of them. And they make money. They make a living. They have to find new ways of working and making a living.
I was looking into a certain issue recently for someone, a client who they wanted someone to do work. They've got a holiday home in Spain,
Yeah.
and they just wanted to work from a holiday home in Spain. And when we looked into it, with immigration laws, strictly speaking, they would need a proper work permit to do that. But what was really interesting on that point, the digital nomads, is that Spain are looking to bring in this sort of digital work permits for people to be able to work remotely.
There you are.
Our issue around that is
She's
about...
out. she's out. Sorry, what did you say?
I was just going to say, our issue around that though is about data, about accessing data that's being hosted abroad and you downloading data onto your computer that you're then in a different country because we deal with medical records. And we've got contracts
it's a nightmare, isn't it?
Say you cannot access data that is not hosted in the UK.
So, and I'm going to go back to something. It's actually the new generations don't just want a job. Believe me, that's true. They don't want a job. That's not what they're looking for. They want fulfillment. They want purpose. Yeah. And when you think about recruiting, this is why it's so difficult to recruit for certain roles. Because for me, the organisation hasn't truly looked at itself and said, are we still relevant? Are we still structured in a way that makes sense for the world around us? And I'll come back to that. And in fact, you're very lucky, sir, because the answer is in the book, where we talk about some of the things you need to think about. Honestly, I'm not pushing it, but genuinely, but it all comes together. Thank you for saying that, actually. It is, isn't it? It's very, very difficult. So, why? So, we talked about trust. Thank you for mentioning trust. And we know trust is often in short supply. So I have got clients, in fact I've got leaders who sat me and said, "Give a quick word. We've been building this really great culture, Freddie, and I'm conflicted." Why are you conflicted? Because part of me says, I want to see my team, I want them here, I want them back in the office, but I also know I need to do the right thing. And I don't know how to deal with it, because I don't want to undermine the trust we've built, but at the same time, I really need to tell them I want them here, but I don't want to disengage them. And I know some of them don't want to be there. Can you see the turmoil? What are your values saying in your organisation? What does that mean about who you are and your identity? What do you exist to do? How do you need to recontract with your team so it is most appropriate for you, because you're the employer, and for them, because you don't want to lose your time? So trust, and we know trust is so hard, and I'll talk about how we build trust, especially in the hybrid environment. So it's really important to understand that that has to sit at the core and how we deal with hybrid working as well, or flexi working, or remote working. Does that make sense? Sure you're with me so far, yeah? Okay, cool. So I just want to have a couple of observations though, before I talk about trust, because few things have happened. So I'm going to use psychology just for a minute, okay? Do you feel different about work? Anybody here feels different about work since the pandemic? Yeah? Can you pinpoint what it is that you feel different about?
I feel more respected.
You feel more respected? In what way?
Because my needs are also taken into consideration, not just operational.
You're lucky. You're lucky. You clearly work for a good employer. Can you pinpoint what's different? Anyone else?
I feel like life and work has really merged. You've got people coming into the office with their dogs, and it's almost like the office and the home is almost the same thing.
It's become a bit more blurry?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Anyone else?
The whole culture of businesses has changed
Yeah.
as a consequence of the pandemic, and I think what it did is that people then considered about what was valuable and important to them. Maybe they've been in a job or an organisation that had just driven them into the wall. They didn't particularly enjoy it, and suddenly their values in life has changed. So it's given them an opportunity to think, well, actually, I don't like the job I'm doing, and I may go and change and look at something. And when you mentioned about people want something different now. It's not all about earning loads. I mean, people want to earn money, of course, but it's not about always earning as much money as you can. It's now about balance of life,
Yeah.
about actually being in a job that you enjoy,
Yeah.
as opposed to just being money driven.
100%. 100%. I mean, we've seen an example where people have taken less money for better working conditions and flexi working and all the rest of it. Because there's more to it, yeah? Yeah. So, yes.
I was just going to, so I'm the complete opposite, and I found that I really struggled to work from home.
Yeah.
I could not separate home from work.
Yeah.
And the moment I woke up, my laptop was there looking at me. I would check my emails, make a coffee, check my emails, make breakfast, check my emails, get my daughter up, check right through till before I went to bed.
You couldn't switch off.
And I love working in the office.
Yeah.
So
Brilliant.
I worked very hard in
Yeah.
walking away from the office
Yeah.
and leaving work at the office.
So what we're talking about here, and this is why I put this here, because some observation, we have all become much more consciously aware of our needs. We used to work in organisation when we talk about the unconscious awareness. People come to work, they're like zombies. They're not even notice the colleagues. They are unconscious and unaware. And what we talk about in leadership is becoming conscious and aware. Look around, observe, develop your emotional intelligence. When you say to someone, hey, how are you? And they go, I'm fine. And you know it's not quite right, you don't walk away, you go, oh, fancy a coffee? Because you have noticed what's happened. And I think what the pandemic has done is stopped us in our track. It says, you're right, David, yeah? Actually, when I strip all the nasty of my work, the travel, the lunches, the meeting with the customer, the job in itself isn't what I want to do. Plus also, as you probably know, 45 to 55s have gone. They've left. They've repurposed. A lot of them have, because it's not about money. They had enough money. Okay, so things have changed. This is really important to understand. Things have changed. Now, this is where also the other complexity has happened. So we've become very introverted. And what's happened is a lot of organizations have said, oh, I don't want to lose my people. You know, it's already hard. I don't want... John's been working with us for 15 years, 20 years. It's really good. You know, Mary Claire, she's exceptional. I don't want to do that, but she seems unhappy. So we've become very introverted. We looked at our employees, we've asked all these questions. We did a piece of work with this company I was telling you about. We went out there, they've grown through acquisition, and we're looking at hybrid working specifically. We had lots of focus group. What do you want? What you're looking for? What would be good? What kind of company? What kind of culture would be interesting for you? Blah, blah, all this question. And then we ask one question that completely baffled them. What was the question?
What do you want? What do you want?
No, we've asked all that. No, what do you want? Oh, no, we started with what do you want? What would keep you here? What kind of environment? Do you have the technology? Do you have everything you can do working? Pardon?
What do they want?
Who?
The employee.
No.
The employer.
No. Who?
Customer.
Sorry?
Customer.
Customer! Seriously, how many organizations, literally that time, how do your customers want to interact and transact with you today? We have customers? Seriously, so this is an insurance company. They have lots of brokers, okay? And if you had spoken to them before and you say, how do you spend your days, how do you work with your customers, say, face to face. Our customers want to see us, they love us, one-to-one. It's all about building trust. And there was none of that. Now, it was all online. But none of them had asked the question. None of them had come to the customers and said, hey, how's life with you today? How do you want to transact with us? They didn't recontract. I call this recontracting. And by the way, this is really, really important to think about recontracting. Okay? Does that make sense? Because, I mean, seriously, we're out there. We see them all the time. And people assume that customers will continue to transact, or they're quite happy transacting in a particular way, when actually, they also miss you. We don't want them. choice. It doesn't work for us. But you're giving us, we don't seem to have a choice. So we become very introverted. So, but it's all important, because what does that do eventually? So take everything I've said, yeah? How many of you as an organization can clearly define your purpose? What do you exist to do as an organization? Pardon?
Make books.
Make books.
Sell books. Sell books.
Make books, sell books.
Provide knowledge, that case.
What kind of books?
Kids books.
Kids books. That sounds exciting.
Colouring books, yeah.
Colouring books. Love it.
Really
Because surely you're there to create joy, aren't you? That's your purpose.
Yeah.
Stickers get everywhere.
I don't like stickers. Love it. Love it. But, okay, but I'll come back. Anybody's got a purpose, so a clear vision that they can define.
To allow individuals and leaders to flourish.
Nice. Love it. What else? Anyone else?
Keeping people in work safe and well.
Keeping people at work safe and well. Oh, that's good. Yeah? Brilliant. Okay? Anyone else? I'm still working on that one. So we have a purpose, as I say, to help leaders deal with a big issue by building human organizations. It's clear, and then we define it. So the reason I talk about purpose is because the world has changed. Period. That is a fact. We are not who we were before. You may sell the same thing, but how you need to go about it, how your people and your employees think and feel is different. But of course, humans like to put labels on stuff, so therefore, because it's easy to deal with. Sometimes people come to us, clients, and they say, we want to change, Freddie. I said, okay, cool. What do you want to change? We want to change. Our culture is toxic. Okay, tell me more. Yeah, okay. So, well, I'll tell you what we need to do. We need to do this. No. That's too expensive and too complicated. We just want you to come in, help us with our values so we can put some nice words in the wall. Ah, okay. So you're not serious then? You want transactional change, not transformational change. You're not serious. You want to put some veneer on something. Yeah? That's what you want. It won't work, but I'll still take your money. No, actually, I don't. I don't actually. I don't. And I'll tell you why. It's true, because actually 4 years ago we did that as an organization. We sat at the board, and truthfully, the head of vehicle sales looked at me and he said, oh, yeah, I think we need to have more conversation as a board. Freddie, would you come back? 6 weeks later they came back and said, point taken, we want to do this properly. On the day we launched their values, they had grievance put in on one of their senior people, and 3 weeks later, after investigation, they fired the person because one of their values that we co-created inside the organization was courage. And they followed through on that. Now, there is a reason linking all this to hybrid, because this is a great opportunity to look at your organization and say, what do we exist to do? Now, we help a company called Purina. Do you remember Purina? Yeah? What do? They make
Animal food?
Yeah, they make pet food for dog and cats. Actually, if you talk to people at Purina, what's their purpose? Because we help them create it, you know what they say? We do what we do because we believe pets and people are better together. Fantastic. So they help pets live longer. They help to fight disease in pets by providing better, nutritious food. No, seriously, it's a serious business. Because actually making pet food is boring. But helping cats or dogs live longer. Because we know when you introduce animals to care homes, for example, older people live longer. You know, dogs can detect illnesses and stuff. So that's the purpose, that's what I'm talking about. We work with Bupa. There was an insurance company, if you talk to Bupa, and they'll say, what we do, we help people live longer, healthier, happier life. That's inspiring. So the point about going back to what I was talking about hybrid. Hybrid is a label. If you want to change how people feel, you need to start looking about what you exist to do, and this is still relevant today. Okay? And to do that, and this is in the book, by the way, so to do that, this is a model we use. A lot of the company that we've worked and we're working with, we're getting them to pause for a minute. Do what we do still relevant? How we do it still relevant? What is the narrative and what we're hearing from our employees, our stakeholders, and our customers, and that still makes sense in the organization we are today. Okay? What's our context? Not just as a business, but in our sector and globally. What are the big things that may come in and actually completely gazump our strategy? And what are the consequences in the way we structure ourselves? What do we believe? Beliefs is one of the hardest things to do. Beliefs is, I believe my organization operates in that sector, in that way, that's how we transact with people, and that is also based on data and historical data, okay? But why do we believe this? What are the consequences of changing our beliefs? It's in the book. Gina, I'm looking at you because the answer is that. But beliefs is our truth of today. And it's been proven that if you don't challenge your beliefs, if you don't look at what may come through the context, may come into challenging that, you may find yourself out of business. Because technology changes every single day. Yeah, and may change that. And therefore, what are the behaviors we need, yeah, in order to help us move forward? So, beliefs and behavior. Have a quick look at the definition here, and that's what we need. Once we've done that, in our research, what we found is today, in order to be an effective leader, there are some fundamental things that you need to think about when operating, let's put it, in a hybrid environment, a flexible environment. What is the role of leaders today? Okay? Now, I'm not going to go out too much on that, but how visible are you? Well, I'm working from home. I wave to my team every day on cam. Well, actually, if that's what you do every day and that's your visibility, that's fine. If that's the way your organization operates. For some people, we know they want to see you. I'm not going to say they want to touch you, that's a different thing, okay? But they want to see you, they want to hear your voice. It's a different things when we're together, isn't it? They want to hear your voice. They want to understand what you stand for and the values. They want to hear where we're going. They want to get a sense of direction, purpose, vision. They want to understand, and also from a point of view of versatility, like this morning, you're expected to come in, sit down. No, I got you to do something different, because we need to be agile, we need to be prepared for the unknown. And also, this bit here. Have the people around you and the leaders around you, have they become more open, more authentic, more vulnerable? Yeah? Have they? No?
Yeah.
Yeah. We all have. I think we all have through this process. So, there's the voice here, and then we, for me, leaders have to then do three things, which is set direction, shape the culture, allocate the resource. But I think the most important thing, therefore, dealing with hybrid, or flexi working, or agile working, or working from home, or remote working, is to step back for a minute and say, is this really the problem? Hence the title, Myth or Reality. And for me, it is both. It's both myth and reality. Because actually, the only consequence of looking and put it in a box, it becomes a problem that we have to deal in isolation, rather than saying, how do we need to be as an organization to allow us, and I mean us as a business, us as people, us with a transaction, a relationship we have with our customer, to be at our best, to allow us to recruit the very best talent that exists, to be a modern organization that is agile and works effectively. Very quickly, trust. We talked about trust. This is a model of trust that we use. Okay, are we okay for time? Yeah? Okay. Model of trust that we use, and for us trust is delivered through how sincere are we about who we are, how reliable are we in the way we do things, how committed are we to do these things and following up, what's our integrity, how competent are we, and are we consistent? I can spend more time talking about that if one day we do something around trust. Trust is a very important ingredient. So in your redefinition about what are you about as a business and what do you want to be, how trusted are you? How trusted is your leadership? Okay? I'll give you an example. I work with this big organization and they worked in a really terrible office, but every time you went there, it was a big tower in Croydon. Okay? Some of you might know who I'm talking about. And every time I went there was a buzz around the place, but goodness me, the office was just dreadful, but it was a buzz. And then one day they said, we've got a brand new head office, we're moving to this brand new head office. And it did. Where they were, they couldn't park. It was a nightmare. They had limited parking. When they moved to, there was hundreds, there was a multi-story company. There was a big office. They had a bar. They had a restaurant, did special food every day. They had chefs and everything. They had lovely offices. And I walked in one day, after they settled, and they went, so, that's the new office, it looks amazing. Say, oh, it's weird. I said, what do you mean it's weird? It's really weird. They placed all the directors in the corner of the office. So now we've got presenteeism happening, because nobody wants to leave the office before the time, because they feel, all the directors can see people walking out of the office. And of course, I talked to some of the managers, some of the directors, I said, so I hear things are changing. He says, yeah, it's a bit weird, isn't it? People think that we've got time to look out of the office, worrying about, but they created this myth. Amazing, isn't it? Amazing how you do the right thing and it gets worse rather than get better. So, how do you need to build trust in a hybrid world? I'm going to wrap up. If you look at this, so what we call cognitive trust is around, so what's your purpose? Yeah? What do you come to work to do? And you're right, excuse me, I can't remember your name.
Joe.
Joe. You're right, Joe. It is about role, but it's about, therefore, recontracted individually, yeah? When you're clear about what you exist to do as an organization. So in your role, David, okay, this is our expectation on how we are going to be transacting with you, working together in the environment. And that becomes very transparent. Because then you haven't got people saying, well, I don't know where David is today. He's not in the office, probably on the golf course again. Down the old chestnut. Are you? I'm trying to improve my golf handicap, by the way.
My golf's not very good.
But that's the point, that was the old chestnut. There was no trust, so, and the problem is organised, if you're not careful, people, we're funny with humans, as human beings. If we don't know things, we build stories. We feel the blank. We genuinely do. And you have to watch that. Oh, hybrid working in my company, that's a very individual thing. Yeah, David's always on the golf course. But the point is, so you need to have a clear purpose. You need to have individual team goals and accountability. You need to recontract regularly with your team. Share expectations of ways of working. This is how we need to work with our customer and how that means for us internally. Build psychological safety. Have to be vulnerable. People have to understand that they can come into an organization and be themselves, especially today. There's so much, I guess another label. I'm sorry, another label. The mental health issue is definitely there. No denying about it. But again, we label it. Because mental health isn't just people who suffer from panic attack or stress or anxiety. It's all sorts of complexity. You'll know this, and there's different levels as well. And we label it again unhelpful. Encourage the team honesty, safeguard good communication. Communications everywhere we go is key. You know, sometimes feel so through because we feel the bad because we haven't heard. And empower your teams to make decisions. Now that is a hard one. Because defining what decisions are expected is all about contracting again. Yeah?
So when you, sorry to interrupt.
No, please do interrupt.
When you look at then, what you've talked about today is how we used to work pre-pandemic, and how we work now. Businesses have changed, cultures changed, working patterns have changed. Do you go into businesses, see how businesses work, and improve their processes? So would you say...
we don't improve process, we improve human.
Sorry, human. Yeah. So if you look at how efficient businesses were before and now, would you say we've got a more efficient workforce generally, or has it got less efficient?
What do you mean by efficient? If you're talking productivity, the UK has had one of the lowest productivity of the biggest economies.
Yeah,
Okay?
but
So,
I'm talking about the way we work now.
Okay.
So we've introduced hybrid working in a lot of organisations. So do you think ultimately that is going to improve things long term, or do you think it's knocked us back because it's all?
I think we're in a period of transition, if I'm honest with you. I think for some people they're still playing and experimenting, definitely. Some people are putting new technology into place and they're finding their fit. So for example, in some of the...
Apologies, I've got to put some client call.
No, that's
Thanks very much, enjoy it today.
Nice to see you. In some organisations, for example, they used to do annual surveys, okay? Now, they measure people on an ongoing basis. There's a really great tool, by the way, if you've not heard of it, called Office Vibe, okay, which is brilliant. It's of the moment, on the day. You can have a look how people feel about their managers, trust, etc., etc. So I think we're in a period of transition, and I think some people are finding it really hard, especially when you have an older generation of leaders and managers who have certain expectations of how things should be. They haven't challenged their beliefs, okay, and they're struggling to accept that they, as leaders, have to be the change. And unless they've made that conscious choice, nothing will happen, because they can talk the talk. But what people observe is old-fashioned leader. Why aren't you in the office? I expected you in the office. I thought we contracted that you should be in the office. This kind of thing. So I think we're in transition. Yeah? So, summary. Top tips. Purpose, vision. Why do you exist to do? Does that make sense in a current context? When do you want to get to? Experiment. It's still a good time to experiment. Have a go. Have a go at new things. You know, if it doesn't put your business into jeopardy, have a go. Try a new software. There's loads of stuff out there which will able to, to work out. Try things. Build trust all the time. Give more opportunity for people to contribute. And actually, when I talk about, I'll come back to you in one term. When I talk about culture, when people say, oh, that's what we want nice words, or we want to, transact or transformational, yeah? You have to understand that the most successful program we've ever done are the ones that have been co-created with the organisation, and sometimes even with the customer. It takes longer, but I tell you that no one can turn around and say, ooh, I wasn't involved in that, so that's not for me. No, because you've given everybody the opportunity to do that. Sorry.
What do you mean by watch out for 3-day weeks?
That's a label. So experiment, but watch out for 3-day weeks. So people have got the tendency to say, yeah, let's try hybrid working, 3 day in, 3 day out, 2 days out. It's just saying, let's fix the problem by just saying, that's how it's going. We're going to resolve hybrid. So, yeah? Yeah, makes sense. Inclusive and agile culture, we have to think about that. This is, it doesn't work for everyone. So what are we to do? What do our customer wants from us? Because you have to remember the customers at the end of the day pay the bill. Yeah? If they are involved in your conversation, if you then, the best way to change an organization is bring the customer voice at the center of the organization. What do our customer want? What do they need? Don't make the customer the problem, make them the part of the solution. And delegate real power to the lowest level. Develop your people. Get the leaders to talk about what needs to change, how they need to change as leader, how do they need to lead in the new, for the organisation to be fit. Don't talk about hybrid. Say, this is who we are, this is what we stand for, this is our culture. No matter where you go, that's what we're about. And therefore we have people who are agile and work everywhere. Okay? And remember one thing ultimately, which is culture will always be strategy for breakfast. Your culture is what people will join you for, not your strategy, not your hybrid working policy, not your working from home 3 days a week. No, it has to go deeper than that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.